Is that good? All right.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of sad that more people can't celebrate the sex lives of their parents. And I'm going to tell you why, but first you got to sit through a little backstory. When I moved into my first apartment as an adult, my parents gifted me some furniture they no longer needed. And my dad and I had just loaded my childhood dining room table into the back of the U-Haul when he patted it and said, "I hate to see this piece go." Now, this was a Formica-covered, metal-legged beast. All the rage in the mid-'60s, a little dated in the late '80s. And it had long been relegated to our utility porch as a folding station for laundry, so his sudden nostalgia was a little perplexing. "Why is that, Dad?" "Well, you may have been conceived on that table." Welcome to my dad. A couple of months later, I came home for a visit, and I was proudly telling my parents about my first dinner party. And I say proudly because they owned a restaurant, and I knew they'd be pleased that I'd offered a proper appetizer, main, and dessert. Finishing my description, I said, as we sat down to the table with full glasses of wine, I said, "You know, my dad tells me this is where I was conceived." Welcome to my dad's daughter. There were only a few overt statements like that. And by the way, he was mortified. He made me write down the names of every person who attended that dinner party and kept the list so he could ensure I never brought them home to meet him. But those overt statements aside, there were hints, dozens, that peppered my childhood that let me know just how much my parents were attracted to one another. For example, the summer before I went into fourth grade, we moved from Atlanta to West Point, Georgia, a rural mill town, where they bought a restaurant that I mentioned earlier, and that's where they would come home from the restaurant after a long day, sit at that table, do the accounting of the business, and after they finished, my mom would get up, walk down the hallway to the only bathroom in the house, from which you would hear the sound of running water after a couple of minutes. Then a couple of minutes later, a knock would come from that door. And my dad would get up from the couch where he'd settled with a book, walk down the hallway, and join my mom. That's just the way it was. Parents showered together to conserve water. Kids got their own time in the bathroom. Well, at some point, I had a friend come for a sleepover. We're sitting there watching television. My parents are doing the accounting. My mom gets up, goes down the hall. Here comes the water. Here comes the knock. My dad gets up, walks down the hall. My friend says, "What just happened?" "What do you mean?" "Well, where's your mom?" "Taking a shower." "Where's your dad?" "Taking a shower." "Together?" To which I replied, "We're Presbyterians." Because the Southern Baptists dominated the religious landscape. There were a few Methodists, but we Presbyterians, especially the ones with women deacons and elders, we were exotic. And I had learned that anything that seemed odd or eccentric that my family did could be ascribed pretty handily to Presbyterianism, making me come off somewhat mysterious. But the truth is, especially in hindsight, I'm really grateful to have had parents that exhibited such a robust relationship. They liked one another. It was apparent. They spent 20 hours out of every day together. And the number of times I could see them honestly angry with one another fit on two hands. They loved one another. It was clear in the way they supported and celebrated each other's victories and bore each other's burdens. And I think I made it clear they desired one another. I asked my dad his advice on finding a soulmate. And he thought about it, and he said, "Find someone whose hand fits yours, and then hold on to it." About 8 years after I lost my dad to a massive heart attack, I found that hand. And I know my dad would have been shocked and surprised, and then afraid for me, and then angry at me to know that that hand belonged to a woman. But I also know that with time and observation, he would have come to know that I had watched their lives together. I had listened to their dialogue. I had embraced his advice and taken it. And I've been holding on ever since.